Hi. Okay, so how do we fix this? When researching for this program, it was difficult and surprising to hear all the ways that people of color, Jewish people, and Muslim people have been harmed in the roller derby community. While we cannot change the actions of the past, we can put in the work necessary to change the present and future. Today, we will discuss some actions that leagues can take to improve their safety and culture. To paraphrase Dreadlocked and Loaded, we must understand the difference between being a racist and upholding policies, beliefs, actions, and systems that are founded in racism and perpetuate racism. White people have to be willing to pause, sit in their uncomfortable feelings, and listen. Otherwise, we cannot get to the part of the conversation where Black, Indigenous, and people of color, or BIPOC, and Asian, Pacific Islander, or API, people explain how an action, policy, or thought process causes harm, suffering, and damage to them as individuals or to their communities. When learning to implement anti-racist and inclusive practices, the very first step we need to take is listening. This means listen when people talk about their personal experiences, listen when someone comes to leadership with a concern. Do not listen to respond, but listen to learn. If you find yourself immediately thinking about rebuttals in your head, silently repeat back everything the person is saying. Pay attention to the systems of oppression they are calling out. Listen for suggestions on actions that can be taken to change those systems of oppression. And listen, but do not censor their pain, frustration, and anger. This is not the time to enforce civility politics. Civility politics emphasize style of language and tone over the content of what is being said. It is a form of gaslighting that demands an individual maintain a particular emotion state, calm, collected, and respectful, before their personal experiences are allowed to be shared. Civility politics places the feelings of the individual listening over the welfare of the harmed individual. If you become defensive when someone is sharing a personal experience with you, ask yourself why that is. This is particularly important if someone is talking about harm you may have done to them. If you are unable to listen and hear that individual's perspective, request a third-party mediator to assist. For JRD, member relations is available to be an unbiased third party. While engaging in conversations of discrimination is not the time to deep dive into your own feelings, you can and should take notice of your feelings and return to them later. When we sit in our feelings of discomfort, we are able to use those experiences for personal growth. It may sound cliche to say, be the change you want to see, but is no less true. If we want changes to happen, we must make change a priority on all levels. Certainly, we can all analyze and adapt our individual behaviors accordingly. But for real change to take root, we need to affect it on a systemic and structural level. There are several ways to start, which we'll review in a moment. But first, remember to do your research and then ask the questions. Do not expect your BIPOC, API, Jewish, and Muslim friends to do the work for you. There's a plethora of resources available. Please use them. When you're ready, choose your next step with consideration for what you have learned and what you hope to achieve. Here are some examples. You could create a committee devoted exclusively to creating tangible steps for change, create educational programs as part of new league member training and minimum skills. This could include a general diversity and inclusivity training that covers anti-racism and anti-discrimination to set the tone for league culture immediately. Create interleague processes for dealing with racism and discrimination, including the creation of safe spaces where members and observers can report microaggressions and racism. Update attendance policies to account for non-Christian religious holidays and cultural practices. Take into consideration league mates who may be practicing beliefs that could impact performance or attendance, such as fasting. Stop equating English fluency with intelligence. Stop centering white linguistic standards as the professional norm. Stop policing or punishing linguistic and language choices that are not white-centered. Use inclusive language in all league documents and marketing, including league and derby names or logos. Specifically, this means that all harmful language should be removed. Then, after enacting these solutions, take steps to ensure the change you have created is preserved. Continually examine policies and procedures for biases, and demand WFDA create systematic processes for dealing with discrimination and incorporating anti-discrimination practices. Once we have a strong foundation within the league structure, it is time for the next step, which is creating a safe space and strong culture where our BIPOC, API, Jewish, and Muslim league mates can thrive. This means improving our overall approach towards diversity, including recruitment and presence. Jacksonville is roughly 50% white, 30% Black, 10% Hispanic, 5% Asian, and 2% mixed race, 2% other, and 1% Indigenous. Our league should reflect this. Next steps should include making recruitment and visibility a top priority. We need to be present at events where BIPOC API people attend for both marketing and recruitment. Diversifying social media posts and online presence to include acknowledging important days that aren't white, Christian, or even USA centered, and include more varied images. Being vocal in support of issues that don't center whiteness or white priorities. Fundraising for organizations that support or are run by BIPOC, API, Jewish, and Muslim people. Recruiting more officials of color and supporting those officials. Having straightforward conversations with officials about over-penalizing or policing Black and brown bodies and ensuring these skaters have an equal voice in discussing calls during timeouts or gameplay. Recruiting announcers of color, and including more practice time and space for NSOs/SOs/announcers to practice calling jersey color and numbers correctly and to practice pronouncing names correctly. Finally, the creation and preservation of a safe space requires an inclusive mindset among all participants. We are all responsible for protecting our league culture and building a diverse community, but remember to speak up, but not over. If you see a microaggression happen, privately talk to the individual affected and ask if it's okay with you to address the issue you witnessed with the offender. Then respect their answer. Request your jersey company provide league logo options for long sleeve jerseys and head covers, etc. Diversity sponsors, including using BIPOC API-owned establishments for after parties and league meetings, and diversify the community organizations your league supports. Host after parties at locations that accommodate food restrictions are welcoming to all. Embrace and use restorative justice and rehabilitative practices. Educate yourself and your league mates about restorative justice and rehabilitative practices. Shift from a punitive system to a one of education, justice, and healing. Learn about harm reduction. Understand how intersectionality and microaggressions compound harm. Before asserting any form of discipline, always ask, what do we hope to achieve with this action? To shame the person, to encourage a change in behavior, to create division between that person and leadership, to educate, because this is how it has been done in the past. Learn the history of roller skating and Black culture. Learn the history of peoples who inhabited the land of your community. Learn about current events that are impacting BIPOC API members of your community. Learn about current events impacting Jewish and Muslim members of your community. While this list is extensive, it is by no means exhaustive. We encourage members to research more ideas and provide an outline of how to implement that idea to leadership. Recommendations for change directly taken from or inspired by the intellectual property of the following people: Baller Shot Caller, Dreadlocked and Loaded, Punchio Guts, Merely Wretched, Queen Luzia Tifa, Team Indigenous and Jewish Roller Derby, as well as the various online sources. We strongly encourage you to read and engage with their full works available in the resource page.